Hi everyone and welcome to my channel Caroline's Knits. This video is about my stash. I have already, I had already recorded some clips and I realised that it just wasn't the right format. Essentially, I hadn't tidied things first. And I think organisational videos can sometimes work if you kind of go from something looking messy to then looking really tidy, but I'm just going to be honest and say that my stash still looked messy at the end of it. So instead, I've done a quick tidy this morning and I'll give you a tour around. At that portion, there will be rustling. I feel like you could probably do a voiceover, so if it's terrible with the rustling, maybe I will, but I reckon I'll keep it in and you'll have to survive a little bit of rustling, so I do apologise in advance. But I thought before that, what the original video really missed, I think, is that I am obviously very keen to bring down my stash this year. Now, a lot of my yarn wasn't actually bought this year, and so it's not like I have, you know, like in the past year really increased my stash. And that might sound really good that I essentially imposed a no ban or like a no buy ban, or no buy, like a yarn buying ban. I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say. I had sort of imposed that and stuck to it to quite a far extent. I bought very limited yarn. However, I also had the really great privilege last year to do quite a few sponsored test knits. And so while I maybe didn't increase the size of my stash, I certainly didn't decrease it. So I thought today I would basically show you my whole stash. Now, first off, I should say that I keep all of my stash on Ravelry. So if I click onto Ravelry, I was just making sure my calculations were right a minute ago. I am going to apologise if Ravelry is one of the websites that you find inaccessible. Completely understand if then this part of the video is not for you. But in short, this is basically my whole stash on Ravelry, which especially some of the older yarns have quite good clear photos. And some of the newer ones I haven't. So I have two yarns that I have stashed that aren't photographed. But in general, I do try to stick on top of it, just because I do feel like it makes it easier when you're kind of looking through your stash, because it means even if something is stored somewhere where you can't easily find it, having it on Ravelry just means you can see how much you have. I also find it really useful for seeing the exact amount of yarn I have of something. So you will notice that, for example, I knitted a pair of socks of this, so when I click in you can see I try to put in as much data as I can. I don't always keep everything up to date, but you know, if you did, this would be, I feel like price paid would be a terrible thing to sum up, so maybe I'll start to do that going forward. But you can see how much I have remaining, which I find really helpful, because then it's really easy to find, you know, if you're like looking for a project, you know exactly how much you've left and you can see the original project that you worked something on. Another thing I've done, sorry, I have fluff in my nose, is that I have also tagged things. So I've basically done a judgment of whatever things I would like to easily find. So one thing here, for example, rast is like Danish word for like leftover, I guess. So I have scrap, which are like the teeny tiny bits, and I'll show you those in my stash tour. So they are basically like things that are so small that unless you're knitting like teeny tiny things, you're not going to have enough. So I kind of keep those on hand for like special projects, stash busting projects I might want to do in the future. But rast are a tag that I use for things that are, you can see that here, we're kind of in that like, you know, just under one full skein to like 1.5 to 2 skeins kind of world, which should still be plenty for making something out of it. So I have all of those, and then I also have a tag for my mohair, which includes I think only scraps actually. Let me just double check. Yeah, so this is all purely mohair scraps, so that again, if I ever was to plan a project that required mohair, that's kind of why I've kept it apart, because I've often thought in time I could do something like mohair only with the yarns. So it's just to say I find Ravelry really good, because the initial setting up of everything can be quite cumbersome, but then with time you do save yourself quite a lot of time. The first time I set it up was quite, I think I started keeping track of everything probably, I think at the tail end of 2020, and then I've just kept it up to date since. And Fela has decided that she is joining us. I forgot my usual intro, which is that welcome if you're new here. Clearly I went straight in for the hardcore stash chat, but my name is Caroline and I live in Scotland with my partner Ben and our dog Fela, who is this little menace who's tired because I'm filming over lunchtime today because I was meant to go into the office, but a meeting got cancelled and the weather is quite frosty. So Fela was booked in for a dog walk she then didn't need to go on. That she was booked in for a dog walk that she need in case I was out, that she's been out on, and she hasn't properly slept because me talking is one of the most exciting things ever. So I do apologise for slight interruptions, but as I was saying, I think organising on Ravelry just means it's easy to keep track of, and the same for my projects. In there I also, so say the Carl Johan sweater, this is a recent sweater of mine. You can see I've put in exactly how much I used, and I've done something wrong with the numbers here, haven't I? I must have. Anyway, that's strange, but usually I try to keep this up to date so that if I ever want to remake, say, my office sweater, I can easily go in and see, okay, I need, 200 and I need for like one strand, I need 1200 meters, say. So it's an easy way to keep track of projects in the future. And the smaller a project is, the more practical it is. So a good example of that would be like a pair of socks, right? So for example, my Morrison socks, for those I used 165.6 meters. So I know if I want to make Morrison socks again, that's around the meterage / the grams I need to use. So enough of that. Now I'm just going to say before we look at this, there is, I'd go back. On Ravelry in your stash, you do have an export button, and that is quite practical for what I'm about to show you, because if you're not keen on using Ravelry for your own reasons, you could easily set up a spreadsheet yourself, and I know it is done. I am on a group where it's like a Norwegian lady who's made a massive Excel spreadsheet that does loads of like background calculations for you if you are into more stricter bans on buying yarn, etc. But I've never really set it up because I find that Ravelry covers covers the basis for me. But obviously having this spreadsheet, I can now save it and then I can compare it in a year's time. So this is my spreadsheet of literally all my yarns. When you get things exported, as you can tell, each place you can fill in information gets put in. So you could certainly add more. You can see I don't add dye lot very often, probably something I should have just in case. And then where it's stored in, and purchase date and price paid, I don't keep track of. And some of the ones I should probably be better off, but you do get export even of things like tags. So again, if you're better with Excel than me, or not better than Excel than me, but it's quite easy to filter, and you could filter just for Rast or for scrap or whatever. And that way, even the exported Excel table is easier to set up, and then you could maintain it outside of Ravelry if you wish. Now, as I said, I usually use Excel, but I don't have Microsoft Office installed on my MacBook. So I've done this in numbers, and I'm just going to be completely honest and say it's difficult when you are trained to use something else. But I hope you will, bear with me. So what I've done is that first of all, I have looked at what's the average grams per skein, and that is 68 grams, which is interesting. So in general I seem to have slightly thicker ones, and I think that's probably skewed by some of the coins in my stash. Then we have yards. Now yards mean nothing to me because I am a metrics person, so the average length of the average meters per skein is 295, which actually surprised me a little bit, but then I do think I have quite a lot of fingering weight, and obviously that tends to run about 220, and then on top of that with the coins, I guess it kind of makes sense. And then down here I decided to calculate the average number of skeins per yarn, which is 17, which to me sounds quite high. Or the highest, no, that's the maximum, sorry. So the maximum number, so the highest number of one yarn that I have in my stash currently, or at least originally, was 17, which you can see that here. I have a feeling that's Peruvian. Maybe not. Oh, there's Pegun, some course. Anyway, you get the gist. We have the total yards and total meters. This is before things are subtracted. So that means the very original patches, that's what all of those were. And now we move on to the actual interesting bit, which is the remaining stuff. I'm sorry, this is kind of confusing. I should probably have prepared the talk through a little bit earlier, but hopefully you kind of get it. And the highest I have left meterage wise is 300 or 3,360 meters. Now, what I was going to do is I was going to suggest that we see if we can't change that to some, because I would be quite interested. So I have 74,637 meters remaining in my stash, and I have just about almost 19,000 grams, or 18,705 grams, or just over 18 kilos of yarn in my stash. 18 kilos, or almost 19, I should say. That is a lot, isn't it? So I would love to get that at least half. That's probably my current goal. I'd love to get it down to under 10 kilos this year, which should be doable. That is a lot of yarn. And as always in these type of videos, if you have, 100 kilos of yarn in your stash, I don't judge you. The size of your stash or my stash isn't, how big I want my stash to be doesn't mean I think your stash should be the same size. And also, I'm really conscious that these type of videos, there's so much privilege to the size of your stash. I have spent a lot of money on yarn, which is another reason I really want to use these fibers. I haven't yet tired of, I don't think my taste has changed dramatically enough that the yarns in my stash are yarns I no longer like. But with that being said, I am conscious that, going forward, I would like to buy yarn for a specific project at that specific time. Currently, I kind of feel like I may not have moved on from the fibers necessarily, but I feel like I have slightly moved on from the some of the projects they were originally planned for, and I feel like it's much easier to buy new yarn for a specific project than it is to buy yarn and then find a project for it, that kind of way around. So yes, I would very much like to bring it down. When I show you the size of my stash, another reason I want to bring it down is that I want it to take up less room. I store all my yarn in the spare room. That's why we always film in here. This is basically my room, if you can see that, with me being an adult. And I store everything underneath this bed, and there's 4 big drawers underneath this king size bed. And so currently 2 of them are fully taken up purely by stash. And I feel like as I knit more projects, I'm going to start to need the drawers probably to store my knits in, or to store something else in, or to move bits about, etc. So I really just want to decrease that. So now you've seen the fact that I've basically, let's round it up to 19 kilos in my stash. And another thing that I thought I would show you is that I spent way too long trying to make this graph, and I'm not sure it is even that good, but I thought it'd be interesting to see what kind of spread we have in my stash. And something that I can see already now is quite interesting is that, first of all, I'm not surprised that the weight of yarn, so basically I wanted to sum up how many I have left of sort of each yarn weight, which is that I by far have the most lace weight yarn. I have added the count here, so that means I have 122 skeins of lace weight yarn. Second to that, I have the next highest is my DK weight, and actually that doesn't surprise me in some sense. I knew I had a lot of DK weight, but I don't think I realised I had just that much. You can see I have a few light fingering and quite a lot of fingering as well. And then I have very, very little in these sort of categories, I guess. I'm surprised I have so much bulky. I think it's because my Sniff Nook is sort of counted as bulky. But I think this shows quite clearly that I reckon most of my projects this year, if you cut basically this out, chances are that this lace weight, I don't think I have any pure lace weight projects planned basically, that all of this will all go with DK weight and fingering weight garments. So yeah, that's a little insight into my stash. I better stop recording the screen, which probably wasn't as neatly described as it could have been. So I hope you bear over with me, but in short, I would like to return to this. I'll probably do about a 6-month checkup. So basically my goal is to, by summertime, how much do we think I can bring it down by summertime? I'd like to get through at least like 4 to 5 kilos. I feel like that'd be nice. However, I'm also conscious if I work purely on big projects this year, my sort of leftover stash is only going to grow. So I would like to get through some smaller projects this year, and I would like to, by summertime, have knitted through most of my sock yarn stash. So yarn specifically bought for socks, because I just don't need to keep that much stashed. And that's enough for this chatty bit. Now let's move on to the stash itself. Before I do, I should make it perfectly clear that some of these yarns have been gifted for test knits, or have been gifted from Simona, from Knit, for trying them out, I guess you could say. And so I can't mark it all as ad, simply because, or like I can't mark it as precisely when things are ad, as I maybe usually would. So just to start out with the warning that there are ads, in the sense that some of these yarns have been gifted. And so has the yarn for the sweater that I am currently wearing, which I should probably have said at the start, but I will probably just add an ad at the start, add the product placement tick, and add as I go through, just so that none of you feel like I'm trying to trick you in how much money I've spent on my stash, or haven't been clear in declaring what's been gifted. So let's go into it. So before we begin, I thought I would quickly just show you the room. So this room is not massive. It's essentially, it fits a bed, a dirty laundry basket, and then it fits my desk, or not my desk, my dressing table over on that side. And this room is incredibly unfinished. You will also be able to see, if I move you over here, that we have my wardrobe, which is also where most of my knits live, not very neatly tidied at the moment. They tend to get tidied every once in a while, folded really neatly, sorted, and then they all just get squashed back in. The most neat is probably where I am keeping all my knitted socks. So that's really what this room contains. We are currently thinking we'll paint it. So I actually have some paint samples in the headboard, but we haven't gotten around to it yet, because basically a certain someone was a klutz one morning and did this. I spilt tea all over the wall, and our paint is not wipeable at all. So yeah, it all needs kind of redone, I guess you can say. What else is there to say? You can also tell that Fela's here, because this is where Fela loves to lie. It faces the front of the street, and she loves to lie. This is also like lie here, watch the world go by, and get all of the south facing sun. On here I also have my current whip in its project bag, because I thought I'd talk a little bit about transporting projects around and kind of how I work it. So currently this is my sweater number 18 by My Favourite Things Knitwear, and currently it lives in this project bag that I bought from Midwinter Yarns. And if you missed it, I bought it I had to own it when I saw this particular tartan, which is actually my partner's tartan. It's the Ancient Mitchell tartan, which is what he wore for our wedding. Also in this room over here, I have this basket, which, to be honest, I'm not completely sure what's down there. I think there might be, there's a few projects that I need to frog that I started, never finished. And then underneath, I have yarn that I was given for our wedding. I will just show you. Also, oh God, look at all that. Do you see that? You can still see the mark on my knitting finger. Now, I'm also just going to apologise for things like this, because clearly I haven't moved that for a while. So let's pretend you never saw when I hoover, I'm a lazy hooverer and I just do the bare minimum. But yes, this yarn is from Sakami, which is one of my favourite hand dyers, and I have actually quite a lot of yarn. However, this was gifted to me for my wedding and it's all wound up. So this is a custom dyed colour for me in the colour Gilly Doo, which is our wedding venue, which was bought by my lovely knitting friends, Laura from Penrose Knits, Sophie from the Knit Pearl Girl, Lizzie from Hive Knits, and Simona from Knit. And then here, this yarn, Sakami kindly sent with it as a wedding gift, and this is camel silk, and I think this is undyed and it just has such a beautiful sheen. So this is destined to become a project quite soon, I think, and I think it will become a centre sweater from my lovely friend Sophie. And then, as I said, here we have a big basket which contains extra project bags. It contains a project in Pigin that I'm planning to frog. I think there's another summer project underneath here as well, if you look. And then it's just crap. Things that I need to sort, basically. So let's just stuff that again and sit down. And then it also has my Licking needles. So I'm just going to move all this dust. I should have hoovered, shouldn't I? I should have cleaned before taking you in here. I also have my Licking needles. These were a present from Simona, and they're one of my interchangeable needle sets. So they're this like absolutely stunning pink, but they're short tips, and I have swivel cords with them. So I do love the case. I think it's very pretty. So that just lives in here for now. Now, another project bag that I tend to use in different periods is this, which isn't a project bag at all, but it's just perfect for knitting. It's been standing with a big project in it, so it kind of needs to be flattened back out. It's a bag from a brand called Aspinall of London, and this was a sale colour I bought when I graduated uni. Basically I bought it for myself with gifted money from my family, and it has my initials on it, which you can do when you order online, and it's this really beautiful real leather burgundy, and it has like a bright blue lining, and as any knitter, first of all, it's as usual also needs cleaned, but it also has like a rogue stitch marker. So I tend to use this, so when, for example, I was knitting the Sharpie sweater that I am currently wearing, when I'm so monogamously knitting, I literally only have one project because I have a tight deadline for the test knit. I tend to keep it in a bag like this because this is big enough to keep a full size project, but it's also small enough that you can easily take it with you and it looks quite nice. Now, another place where I store quite a lot of things is in this. So this was a purchase this summer from TK Maxx, and it's meant to be a beach bag. So it actually is able to be closed here. It has like this inner layer that you could, you know, squeeze on top so things don't fall out, which I don't tend to use, but is obviously quite practical. I don't like zippers in my project bags. I find that yarn almost always gets caught in it, and I don't like it. So this is brilliant to fit basically more stuff. So this almost always lives in this room so that I can easily find it, and in here I just have a few upcoming projects. and current projects, I should say. So I pulled this out today when I organised my stash. This is some hand-dyed BFL Masham from Sakami, and then I also just have some Tilia that I think I'm gonna hold with it to make something. In here, this is a makeup bag where I am keeping the first of a penny glove, and then I have the yarn to make a second and the needles, so I'll be casting that on soon, so that just lives in here, easy to find. In here I then also have I won't do loads of rustling, but in this Loop London bag, these are brilliant actually. They're like big square like canvas bags, I guess, like reusable shoppers, and they are just brilliant to for storing yarn and projects in. So currently I have all the extra balls of yarn for my sweater number 18, and I just keep that in there, and then I could always, you know, as the sweater grows, I might want to chuck it in here and store it in this so it keeps safe, or I might just keep this up here and then I can just refresh. You know, I tend to keep 1 or 2 balls in the project bag at any one point, so I can always change a yarn quality if I need to, but otherwise I keep it in here. That was a lot of chat about that. And then in here I keep this is my my small haberdashery pouch. So in here I have things that I absolutely can't live without. So I have some barber cords, you know, crochet hook. This is a mood, I guess it's mood, a mood like what is it called, like a tapestry needle holder. I will have to show you. This is actually, this was gifted from Knit ages ago, and I just love it. It's one of my most used things because it keeps all of my different tapestry needles safe. As you can tell, I like a few different kinds. I think these ones, let's see if it'll focus, these ones are like bent tips, and then we have some nice big ones over here, and then we have these pony ones which have a nice loop which makes them really easy to thread. So that lives in here, and in the project pouch I also keep this is a measuring tape, and then I have these Chiagu to tighten. I keep lots of my stitch markers in one of these, so I always have them, and then have this which I recommended to Lissy as well. It got rubbed slightly by my Chiagu, the tightness, that rubber seems to take the paint off this, but this is essentially a knitting needle measure, and then it also does a gauge quite neatly with this kind of square that you can put on. And then out here at the very tip, it has a little cutter so you can easily cut yarn, and it's just from Knit Pro, and it isn't very expensive, but it gets so much use for me. And then the final thing that I keep in here that I could talk about is this, which is a stitched row counter, and I love these. I have 2, and they are always in use. I always count things in this, so that all lives in here. And then in this sort of bigger bag, this was actually a present from a manager of mine, an old manager. It's lined in, she's a very talented quilter. It is lined in otter fabric because she knows I love otters, and it's a nice big square space. And in here I just keep more things, like I have a hand cream, and in this mood one I store, this was also gifted, I store lots of barber cords, and then I have some more yarn for an upcoming project. This is the Cardiff Cashmere that was gifted. And in here I also keep 2 needle organisers. So the first one is my Chiagu needle set, which is my most, it's hard to do one-handed, excuse me, which contains, as you can tell, all of my Chiagu needles. This was sent to me by someone who watches the podcast and who wasn't using them, and they are my absolute most used knitting accessory. I haven't really knitted using anything else since I got these, so they always live in here because they're my most used. I also store all my cords just here in the front pocket. And then I also have this, which is so practical. This is a Knit Pro needle organizer. This one, I think you can buy them just on Amazon. But it's getting quite full, but in here I also store a lot of my needles. So here I have some fixed circulars. They just live here because I didn't have a natural other place to put them. I very rarely buy these kind of long fixed circulars anymore, besides for socks, and they're stored somewhere else. But you can see it has these like pouches that you can flip through. And in here I keep my fixed 40 centimeters or smaller knitting needles. So yeah, as you can tell, they're all very neatly organized, and it makes it really easy to find those sizes. I especially own a lot of these ones, the pony ones. I really like them for the price. They're usually really cheap on Amazon, but I find them quite comfortable to knit on. And then at the very back of this, you could store more fixed circulars if you wanted, but in here I store all my cables for my pony needles, interchangeable needles. If you're not sure what the pony ones are like, they're basically these like Pony Perfect, I should say. They're basically this style, so they're like really soft wood with quite a tapered tip. And if I have to work on a wooden needle, I usually go for pony. So that's everything, and again, that kind of is here to be easily moved about. If we were going away for a few days, that's the type of thing I would take, because I can sort of fit it all in there. Now we go to drawer 1, which is slightly overstuffed because I overstuffed it earlier. And in here you can see it is very full. All of this is full projects, like full sweater garment projects that I am to knit. Over here on this side I have some older fixed circular needle sets. So I have my symphonies, and these are Knit Pro Sings, and I have like, you know, random fixed circular. And in this organizer I keep all of my double pointed needles and all my pony needle tips, because I don't have a different case from there. I also have one sock blocker because I'm fairly certain the one has fallen underneath the drawer. So at one point I'll have to empty it and pull it out so I can proper check. But essentially in here, and now the rustling will really begin, I keep all of my projects organised. So back here I have this like Maxi VIP, which is a merino cashmere mix with this hand-dyed second strand meant to go together for projects at some point, which would be really beautiful and soft. In here I have some hand-dyed botanical yarn and some mohair that was given to me by Nina from Knit Flitter for some help with a project at one point. I store all my yarn in these IKEA bags, and I've done for quite a long time. They are not particularly pretty, but it does mean that there's good separation between the yarns. They stay organized, it's easy to squash them, and also it should at least help for preventing mildew and things like this. So I do keep them and reuse the bags. They're not a one-use thing for me. So what else do we have in here? So we have these two bags are a mixture of leftover gifted Knitting for Olive merino and mohair, and some bought, I've supplemented with some bought colours, and this is to be probably an Aros sweater from Petite Knit in the future. I have loads of this Telia and Peruvian Highland wool. In the Peruvian is in Nougat, and the Telia is in light truffle, and it's like a big project's worth. I think this might become a zipper sweater. It certainly fit weight wise. And then here along the back, here we have my Sniffic. I have some Milnut Sword from Kamaluzuk, which is to go with this hand-dyed yarn from Sakami. And underneath down here I have some hand-dyed Madeline Tosh. I don't remember the base. To me it looks single plied, maybe some kind of hand-dyed. I think it's called Autumn Leaves. And then I have some Gepard Kids Sita, which is a soft silk mohair essentially in the colour mink. Bought this when I stopped at my previous job in November 2020 and this is still in my stash, so that's one reason I want to work through it. Speaking of things that's been in your stash for a long time, please enjoy my only project, like whole garment project's worth of Drops Kid Silk. This is in the colour Malva, or colour 31. It's quite beautiful, like, because I think at the time I was still quite a new knitter. This is from July 2020. And I was really drawn to all of these like knitting for olive shades, but at the time I wasn't willing to pay the knitting for olive prices. So I thought I wanted to make a knitting for olive pattern, and I therefore bought a 3-strand quality of this, and then when it arrived it just did not feel as nice, and therefore I've never gone around to knit it. So I'm really hoping I get through some of this year, because it's obscene that this has been in my stash for that long. Again, your style changes and stuff, and I just don't want to keep it for that long. Righty, then we have some VIP, Lanigato VIP, which has some Tilia that matches in latte somewhere in this drawer. We have some more Kamoposa Millet Saw here, which is meant to go with this hand-dyed yarn called, I think, Meadow. This is hand-dyed by Ria Yarns. So I have that to hold together. I honestly don't know. As you can tell, I have now 3 projects worth of these kind of hand-dyed yarns, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. So if you have any great projects that you think these would suit, let me know. This one I don't have as much of, and I was actually thinking that one of them might become a vest. I know Pop Knit has a formation vest, which I always really liked, and I don't think I have enough for sweater version, but I always think that looks quite nice in hand-dyed yarn, so that's potential on my list. Then I have some Lanigato Baby Alpaca 70. This was gifted to me by Knit, and then underneath I have some Peruvian Highland wool and some Blueface Leicester from Woolly Knit, and a Woolly Knit cone in burgundy, and then I have Knitting for Olive, Soft Silk by Hand Rust, and some British wool from Woolly Knit in the colour Cinnamon. It's like vast majority of my sweater quantities. It's probably not all, but it is pretty close. I think it is all, but you never know. These things have a tendency to pop up. So I'm just going to close this and I will meet you on the other side. You can tell Fela finally gave in and fell asleep. Obviously, you always have toys everywhere. So if I open this drawer, this is the not as neat a drawer, as you can probably tell is the other one. So in here I keep my Amish Chiagu Swift. So essentially it's a Swift that sits on your table, and then I have slowly but surely just divvied up most of it. There's quite a lot of gifted yarn in this because most of it is quite recent, so you might recognize, like, you know, like this color was gifted, and that's left over from the project that I have yarn for, that was just finished. Then I have like a bag of mohair, which I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but these are basically all mohairs that aren't destined for another project just now. In here, in this grey basket, I actually used to live somewhere else, but in here I have anything in bags, so not these top ones that I just shoved in, but all of these I have found a project on Ravelry that I could make with this yarn, so that, you know, it goes like, here we have some Filcolana Alva, and for example, I could make Vesta House Vendor by Petite Knit. I could, you know, with this Surrey, I was like, oh, I could make a scarf by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So basically, I've slowly been, you know, I put them all in these small bags so that I can work through some of these stash busting projects, and it's all stored in one place. Then let's say I finish, you know, these also meant for pair gloves, and there's still some yarn back. Well, at least I've written what kind of yarn it is, and I could keep writing, you know, more and more stash busting projects if I so desire. So I keep that in there. And then in the back I have some more yarn. So this is the Lanigato class, which, as much as I love the feel of, has a tendency to be really pilly. So I'm not sure what I will do with that. I have some more hand-dyed yarn. Yeah, I feel like we've kind of looked, like, I'm sure you don't need to see every single ball of yarn in my stash that has ever lived. I was going to say that we have this, which is where I store my less than one full skein of yarn. Not sure what I'm going to do with you stashed. So in here I have like a few different yarn qualities, and it just means that if I ever get inspired by something, or I want to make tiny colour work or Christmas sweater decorations or whatever, yarn lives in this. And I also have kept my hand-dyed Siri from Sakami separate, because in the future I'd quite like to make the Monica scarf, which I'll pop in a picture of so you can see. But that is basically this second drawer, and this drawer I would quite like to get through some of these smaller projects in the next year, because I think there's loads of good stuff in here, also loads of good stuff that could be gifted. And that's the end of my stash. And that's it for my stash. Let me know what you think of the format. I feel like it turned out a lot more chaotic, well, filming at least, than I kind of intended. But I think these videos are just quite hard to film, because you end up with a lot of rustling, a lot of like just showing stuff off, I guess. And as I said, I don't want anyone to feel like that I'm trying to brag about how much I have, because to be honest, my stash doesn't feel very braggable, in the sense that I think it is, I feel like I have bought more yarn than I needed, and that doesn't fill me with too much joy, right? So anyway, thank you so much if you've stuck through all of this. I would, because I'm nosy, I would love to know, do you think 19 kilos of yarn is a lot of yarn, or do you think it's nothing at all? Again, it's not to say you have to make a judgment on your stash, it's for you to make a judgment on my stash, because I'm curious, because to me 19 kilos sounds absolutely extreme. But anyway, I will see you at the end of January for a normal podcast episode to tie off this month. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.